Pompeo's Mideast tour is wrapping up with a second day in Jerusalem scheduled Thursday. Pompeo's two-day visit to Israel also includes a symbolic stop at the new US Embassy, which was transferred from Tel Aviv on Trump's orders last year. Now, it comes on the heels of a meeting with the Emir of Kuwait, who spoke of the importance that the US Middle East peace plan considers regional dynamics.
The Middle East peace plan has long been awaited, and we believe that our friends and colleagues in the United States of America have what it takes and have the necessary ideas to keep on going with the peace process and elaborate a peace plan that will take into account the situation in the region and other relevant stakeholders.
And joining me from Washington, D.C., Senior Fellow at the Security Studies Group, Matthew Brodsky, and still with me in studio, former Israel Ambassador to the United Nations in Geneva and Europe, Itzhak Levanon. Matthew, we'll start with you. How much of a role would these countries have insofar as ensuring the viability of the US Middle East peace plan?
Well, one of the unique features of the U.S. peace plan is supposed to be the economic component, and that's something that both Kushner and Greenblatt have really put a lot of focus into. We could see that in their meetings in the past few weeks that they've taken in the region, specifically concentrating around the Gulf. So I think that's most important for them. I think when it comes to actually implementing any type of agreement, if the parties, of course, agree to it, that'll, of course, come down to the neighbors more, Jordan, Egypt, and obviously the two most concerned parties. But this is something that is sure that they're going to need, because there needs to be a future that Palestinians would see if it is a two-state solution that would be economically viable and beneficial to them. It would change the course.
All right, so Mr. Levanon, to you, then, looking at the three countries that Pompeo is visiting here at this time, Kuwait, Israel, and then Lebanon. Of course, as we've talked about on paper, Iran at the top of the list. Iran is the focus. If you say there's more going on here, other than, of course, this meeting that we're waiting for to take place with Greece and Cyprus, why are these three countries on the list?
Well, first of all, the Kuwait, because Iran is definitely clear for that. The Americans would like, to have the Kuwait supporting them in front of Qatar and in front of the others in reuniting, let's say, the political countries in the Gulf. So Kuwait is an important part of this. Lebanon, I told you what is the problem with Lebanon, is the presence and the consolidation of the grips of Hezbollah in the parliament, Lebanese parliament, and in the government. And secondly, the soft penetration in Lebanon from Russia. In Israel, it is obvious he cannot come to Lebanon, etc., and not to visit Israel. There is 2 points which are very but they call my attention. First of all, is not going to the Palestinian Authority. Right. He was not invited. And probably the Palestinians say to Mr. Pompeo, you are not welcome to come. So he says, okay, I'm not coming. Therefore, he is going to the holy shrines in Jerusalem for the Christians and for the Jewish and not for the Muslims.
Sure, but the Christians are, of course, at least the evangelicals, a very important part of the Republicans' voter base as well, so that's not quite unusual.
Yeah, but we don't have a big community of evangelical community in Israel.
Sure.
We do have.
And it's also understandable because the Palestinians have continued to reject the US.
My point is that he's not going, to the Muslim shrines and not to the Palestinian Authority, etc. It is significant. Thirdly, I do agree, that probably this is the new approach of the economic approach.
Sorry, I have to interrupt you because we are hearing Benjamin Netanyahu speaking at this meeting with Greece, Cyprus, and Mike Pompeo. Let's listen.
Meeting between Israel, Cyprus, and Greece. We began this a few years ago, and it's blossomed into one of the best regional associations in the world. We cooperate in everything from firefighting now to energy. We are planning to lay down a pipeline. It's called the EastMed pipeline from Israel through Cyprus, through Greece, to Europe, something that will benefit our economies greatly, provide stability for the region and prosperity to our peoples, but also we think would diversify the energy supplies to Europe. The fact that we are joined in this meeting by the U.S. Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, I think is significant. It signifies the fact that the United States supports this regional effort, and it has many, many facets that we're going to discuss. And I think that it says that this is something for the long haul. Obviously, We would welcome the association not only of the United States but other countries, something that we're going to discuss as soon as we complete the open part of this meeting. So welcome, friends. It's good to see you again, and we're planning our next meeting as we speak. Nikos, please.
This is indeed a great moment, and I want to thank my very good friend, the Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu, Benjamin Netanyahu, or my dearest friend Bibi, for convening this very historic meeting in Jerusalem. We are delighted to have the American Secretary of State, Mr. Mike Pompeo, joining us today. His presence is tangible proof that our three countries constitute reliable partners to the United States, particularly in the fields of energy and security, and an anchor of stability in the Eastern Mediterranean. Our vision and actions of an Eastern Mediterranean energy corridor is an excellent example in this respect. I want to assure of Cyprus' unwavering commitment to this reliable and solid partnership that aims through tangible actions to generate much-needed security, stability, and prosperity in our turbulent region. This is our grand-scale vision, and we are extremely happy that the Secretary of State is here to endorse its geopolitical value on behalf of the United States, and I look forward to a productive discussion on issues of common interest such as energy security, full respect of sovereign rights and the protection of energy and marine activities, and of course the diversification of energy. Once again, thank you, Bibi.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
So I want to thank Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. It is not the first time. I cannot count how many times I have been in Jerusalem. This is the 6th time that we're meeting together in this strategic trilateral cooperation. So I'm feeling so familiar here in Jerusalem. I think that in the last years, the role of our countries in the Eastern Mediterranean, together and individually, has become stronger. Our cooperation has become strategic. Our trilateral cooperation has become strategic, and particularly in the fields of energy and security. The participation of Secretary of State Mr. Pompeo underlines the United States' support in our strategic cooperation. And this participation, I think that will strengthen our efforts and our dialogue, especially on the field of energy, but not only, security and economy as well. Our challenges that we have ahead, and I think that our region have a lot of challenges, but also important opportunities. Our basic idea is very simple, but very significant as well. The idea is to create a safe and secure network to transport the energy resources of the region of Eastern Mediterranean to Europe, from Israel through Cyprus, through Greece to Europe. And I think that the establishment of the East Med pipeline can help both security dialogue and the economic development of the region. So I look forward to our discussions in this regard. And I think that our discussion could be beneficial not only in the energy field, but about security, safety, stability and economic development of the region as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Prime Minister, thank you for hosting us here in Jerusalem. I'm looking forward to our discussion. Prime Minister Cyprus, President Anastasiadis, you don't know, but about a week ago I spoke in Houston, Texas, to a big group of energy leaders from all around the world talking about opportunities and projects just like this, about how energy connects up with our security interests in America and how the opportunities to create energy in places that we hadn't had it before and transport it and create the infrastructure in places that we've not had it before is an enormous benefit. I think this is incredibly timely. Revisionist powers like Iran and Russia and China are all trying to obtain major footholds in the East and in the West. And we view the United States and Israel and the Republic of Cyprus and Greece as great key partners in security and prosperity. So I'm very much looking forward to our conversation this evening. As we cooperate on these important energy issues, I know we'll improve our security and prosperity even more broadly between our four nations. We believe this deeply. When free countries with free markets act together and work to develop infrastructure for energy, greater security always follows. And I know this too. If we do this right, we will attract the investment that will maximize these resources in a way that good infrastructure and our open markets always do. I'm looking forward to cooperating with each of you in this opportunity in the Eastern Mediterranean. Thank you for allowing me to be here tonight.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you all. Thank you. Thank you.
If you're just joining us, we were there listening to the US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo delivering statements along with the Israeli Prime Minister and the President of Cyprus and the Greek Prime Minister. They're about to sit down to discuss security and economic ties. And of course, the big topic on their hands at the moment is, of course, this EastMed pipeline. Joining me in studio, we have former Israel ambassador to the United Nations in Geneva and Egypt, Itzhak Levanon. Mr. Levanon, of course, we heard the Greek Prime Minister there saying that this pipeline can in fact increase security dialogue. How so?
Let me be candid with you and tell you exactly what I saw, because this picture will help very much Benjamin Netanyahu in his elections. It is definitely speaking to his own constituency. What I saw now, you know, when you have all these leaders, including this the state Secretary of State in this meeting, I see a tacit alliance. And this is important strategically when we are speaking about the eastern part of the Mediterranean. In the eastern part of the Mediterranean, let me remind you and the audience that we have the Russians, that we have Syria, that we have Hezbollah, that we have a lot of people who are not supporting this meeting. So in the meeting between, or in the confrontation between those people, when you are talking about security in this region, it is really coordination, cooperation, stability, a lot of things, and not only the gas pipeline going to Europe.
All right, so then Matthew Brodsky, who's still with us from Washington, D.C. Let's talk about this, because on the surface, of course, it seems like it's about this energy partnership, this economic partnership. Of course, security, stability were, of course, buzzwords that were used there. But we know that Pompeo is also pushing for a greater role in this Middle East Strategic Alliance, which is, for our viewers, is kind of US-sponsored Arab NATO. So what role then does Greece and Cyprus have here in Mike Pompeo's broader interests in this Middle East visit?
One big part that Greece, Cyprus play is they're not Turkey. Turkey's been playing been straddling the fence, playing both sides for a long period of time. If you're dealing with Syria, of course, when it comes to the United States, there are a host of issues the U.S. has with Erdogan. Israel, obviously, is being blamed by Erdogan. They're essentially being called Nazis on a daily basis. It's really quite beyond the pale. So the more that Turkey steps out toward Russia and toward Iran, as it has been doing inside of Syria, the United States is trying to get its own group back together. Of course, that was a mission that was made more difficult when President Trump announced a premature withdrawal of American troops, but we're now back to reestablishing this type of leverage, and this requires working with the Gulf countries, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and creating the U.S. version of how the Middle East would look, and not the Russian version, which would really now tend to put Qatar and tend to put Turkey in a position where they're going to have to choose which type of ally they want to be, a good American ally, or do they want to keep on playing both sides and really irking both their regional neighbors and this administration?
All right, but then further to that, this Middle East Strategic Alliance, we know, was initially conceived to build the Gulf states' capabilities to counter Iran without intervention by the US, or, of course, as Itzhak Levanon continues to refer to, Russian or Chinese intervention. So are there then larger objectives that the State Department is going after now as it tries to scale back its involvement in the Middle East?
Right. I think, first of all, for the Trump administration, everything will always, in one way or another, come down to, is it a good deal? And that's how the Trump administration is looking at things. So everything tying it to money, whether it was the peace plan where there's an economic component that's really big, this type of situation where there's going to be this Arab NATO forces, stabilization forces on the ground that could really minimize the role of American boots on the ground is extremely important. Now, whether that actually works beyond just in theory is yet to be seen. There are plenty of reasons to doubt such an approach. But in the meantime, that is certainly why we would keep hearing about the number of American troops remaining in Syria fluctuating from 1,000 a few days ago back
now
to
we're hearing
400.
400,
so,
right.
Right. So I think that's the main thing, is to get it tied into a package so it's more than just a Syria issue. It's the whole Middle Eastern vision from the Trump administration.
All right, so Itzhak Levanon, to you. U.S. officials, of course, have developed this MESA concept in a variety of ways that would allow for the United States to reduce its military troops in the region without losing, I suppose, its clout in the Middle East. Is that possible?
Yes. If you have a fast intervention, yes. You have places where to do it, yes. And now by creating Greece and Cyprus, you have an excellent place where you can stop over in case that you need that. The Americans, they have the Suez Canal, where they have a priority of passage through the Suez Canal. And now they have Turkey, and they have Cyprus, and they have Greece. So yes, if you have this capability, and the American has this capability of fast intervention, yes, they can reduce their forces. But I don't think that the Americans are going to reduce, definitely, all their forces from Syria, because there is a lot of subsequent, let's say, impact on such kind of step. And I think that the Americans will remain in Syria. But yes, when you create these places, you have a place where to stop over in case that you need that.
All right, Itzhak Levanon, thank you for that insight. And, of course, Matthew Brodsky from Washington, D.C. Let's go back live to our senior correspondent, Jordana Miller, who is in Jerusalem. She's been sitting in that room there, of course, hearing those statements from